I was 7 or 8 years old. I heard 3 loud bangs coming from the basement of our house. I had a brother rush downstairs, and he screamed out for mom and other family members who were at home. Dad was off at work, and one of our family members was drunk in the basement, had a handgun, and was trying to kill himself. My brother got the handgun away, and my family member was just in misery for something. I don't remember what. I was 7, 8. It's 1975. That family member dealt with addiction and suicide attempts for years, decades. My family weren't believers. They would not have even known what to do to consult with anybody. They had no idea how to handle drugs and alcohol problems. They had no idea how to handle um, suicide attempts. But in the last 50 years, there have been a lot of attempts to help people with addiction. Thank God for my family member. Never did. Family member never killed themselves. So praise the Lord for that. And eventually did get help. Took a long time. But a lot of people just didn't know what to do. And even today, a lot of people don't know what to do. And even if you say there are now a host of programs to help addicts of all kinds, there's really a mixed bag of help. What we want to do on Reframed today is to talk about what you do when you're the loved one who feels like they have to step in when somebody's an addict. They're called caregivers. They're called sponsors if you're in AA. They're family members. We want to reframe intervention and codependency today, talk about it from a perspective that will give you help and hope, and maybe introduce you to some principles that get you connected to a good ministry or to us, how to handle those. So welcome to Reframed. What we do is we take the common pain points of life, and this is a pretty common one, addiction, a far more common one than anybody wants to admit. We reframe them under the truths of the gospel of Jesus Christ, where there is hope, where there is help for change, where there is profound change. Last time we did one for the addict. Today we want to do for the person who is the loved one of an addict, a friend of an addict, and we want to talk about that. My name is Dan Jarms. I have 25 years of pastoral ministry experience, and we have helped and pastored, cared for lots of people who have addicts in their life. My co-host Brian Sayers has a lot of experience too.
Yep, oversee the counseling center at Faith Bible Church, and so we deal with addiction and addiction caregivers and trying to help both sides of that problem as well.
Yeah, before we finish today, we want to give you just a couple of survival guide principles that can help you make it. I want to say this at the beginning. If you're helping somebody with an addiction and you love them, you need endurance. You need some measure of understanding of what hope is going to be, what God can do in a person's life. So you follow all the way through. We want to give you a couple of sort of guiding principles for the caregiver, the helper, the person's intervening. Let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, there's some terminology that goes out and around. I want to talk about some terminology that might help us. One of the sets of them, you hear about things about intervention. You hear about codependency. You hear about enabling. Since we're talking to the people who are caring for the addict, let's talk about codependency. What is it? Maybe could you define it, illustrate it for us, Brian? And how do we think through how to best help people?
Sure. Codependency is a term that's hard to get your arms around because it's used and applied in different types of situations. So I think of it this way. When you have a codependent relationship with someone, you are struggling because you're finding your identity or your happiness or your security or your meaning in either maintaining a certain kind of relationship with that person or in making sure that that person is is safe. It's used often in relationships that we would think of as abusive, where you're being controlled and potentially harmed in various ways, and yet you just kind of continue to do everything you can to keep the peace and to keep things going. You don't want the relationship to end, even though it's horrible, and you do things that others maybe are telling you are unreasonable. But you're finding your safety or security or meaning or purpose in maintaining that relationship. Maybe you don't want to be the single mom or the divorcee or whatever. So
I mean, I've heard it reasoned out like this. What kind of good parent would let his son or his daughter fill in the blank? Which would mean
right,
like experience really serious consequences to their sin. Like let them live homeless, let them not pay their bills, bankrupt the family.
right.
Like what kind of good parent or good wife or good whatever would let that happen?
And that's how codependent is used with when you have a loved one who's an addict, right?
Yeah.
So again, you're finding your meaning or purpose or security in not being that kind of parent
Yeah.
who would let their child suffer.
I
And
want to,
so you protect them and
yeah.
you protect them and provide for them and do things again that many people maybe are telling you that's not wise. That's
Yeah.
not helpful. And
Yeah.
yet you keep doing it because you just don't want to see any kind of harm come to your addicted family member.
Yeah. Usually when we watch it happen, somebody doesn't want to allow natural consequences to take their course.
Yeah.
So the natural consequence of a gambling addiction is high debt, bankrupting the family, and leaving the kids without food, clothes, proper shelter, and figuring out how to step in to help those things is really difficult. So, I mean, we get it that it's hard. These are hard things,
Oh yeah.
but you don't want to let the natural consequences work out. Sorry, you can't sleep here and be high and drunk.
Yeah.
You can't be around the kids. Well, I don't have any place to go. So somebody says, well, I'll pay for a hotel, which is just where they go to do all of those things now very comfortably
Right.
without any hassle.
Right.
And that's just even worse. Or you say, well, there are detox places, there's a shelter, there's in our city, there's a UGM. Oh no, those are for people who have real problems. My person can't go there. That's when you're starting to not allow the natural consequences to take effect.
Right. I think of it as I mean, really, part of what's happening is the motivation underneath it is noble in a sense. You're wanting to be loving, you're wanting to care for them, you're wanting to protect them, but it's as though that virtue gets turned upside down
Yes.
to the point where we forget or don't really think about implementing the natural consequences of sin in its therapeutic way. So the Lord disciplines those he loves. No discipline seems joyful for the moment, but afterward it can yield the peaceful fruit of righteousness. So we would never dream of raising small children, our toddlers and grade school children, without teaching them and helping them learn through the consequences of sin, uh, whatever those might be. Somehow, when they get older and the consequences seem so much more severe and potentially permanent, get a
Yeah.
driver's license taken away or going to jail. It's almost like that virtue gets turned upside down, and we do things that aren't wise and ultimately not loving.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get there. Don't leave because we're going to talk about love doing what's best, not always what feels good.
Mm,
Love requires us to do what's best, but we'll get there. Hang on for that. I think one of the questions I ask about this is how do you free yourself? How do you free yourself from codependency? Like somebody's telling you, like they use words to you, like you're just enabling this behavior, or you double guess you second guess yourself. Like, am I an enabler in this? And you're you feel trapped too for a variety of reasons, and um, maybe they do just enough good to keep bringing home money and you can't live without the money, but the person is treating the family horribly or is, like Like, it's hard to figure out what to do. How do I free myself from it? One of the resources that we recommend or people use is a book by Mark Shaw called Divine Intervention. And one of the things that I really thought was helpful, having helped a number of addicts, to just clearly say this: once a person is an addict, what that person wants most is to get the fix or to get the win or whatever the addiction is. And you're just a tool to get that. Like he would say, you're actually not a person anymore. You're just an object, and that person uses you as an object. I may be strong language, but I've definitely been used before.
Yeah.
So I hear what he's saying. But that's what's really helpful or hopeful. And it's why you say no to your addict friend about something, and they get angry with you, they manipulate you, they tell you, well, what kind of good, loving Christian are you? Like they use your virtue against you to manipulate you so that they get what they want. I don't know how many times over 30 years, 40 years, I've been approached by a panhandler and said no, and then they scream and yell at me. Like,
Right.
now I'm really not wanting to give you anything, but that's how they operate. So I would say one of the things to get free from this issue of codependency is to recognize that the person who's addicted wants the thing, that whatever the fix is, whatever the version of it is, so badly that they're willing to manipulate you, hurt you, and do things to you. When you feel guilty for not giving them their fix, like you're being used. So that's a good place to start to say, oh, I'm being used. I'm not helping.
Yeah.
And part of the way I know is the guilt trips that they lay on me.
Right. And I was talking earlier about how, there's a noble virtue underneath it, but it gets turned upside down. It's not necessarily you turning it upside down.
Yeah.
It's often the addict themselves
Right.
turning what is normally a virtue upside down. And you're not sensing, like, how is that dynamic happening?
Yeah. So first thing to get free from it is recognizing just really common tactics to use you to get what you want. The second one to recognize is giving them what they want is not often or ever best. So you really need to stop and think about what's really best for them. And then almost every situation that I know of has multiple people in it. So it's not just the addict and you. It's the addict and you and their kids, your kids, their friends, your friends. And then what you're doing for the addict actually is hurting other people in the family. And that's usually when a person comes to their senses. Oh, this isn't just affecting me. This is affecting all the people around me. And I have to be an advocate for the others, which has been the best way as a pastor that I've been able to overcome the false guilt, is recognizing, oh, this is hurting a lot of people. So we can't let the addict hurt a lot of people. Any other things that you'd add in that issue? How do I free myself from being an enabler or codependent?
Yeah. Conceptually, I came up with this a few years ago when I was actually sitting in a seminar, but with Mark Shaw, actually, and I talked to him afterwards, and um, he was kind of lamenting that it's hard to tell someone don't be an enabler because that word's not in the Bible. It's not, how can I tell someone that's wrong when, um, but conceptually, what's happening? He and I talked about, like, the Bible talks about being an encourager, to encourage one another, come alongside, speak. But encouragement in the Bible is always tied to truth. So when we call alongside someone and want to move them in a direction, it's always tied to truth and righteousness. What happens is, in enabling, is the opposite of that. So instead of moving them toward truth and toward righteousness, we do or we say things or we give them things that actually move them further away from truth and further away from righteousness. Well, they came to me and they were desperate. They needed grocery money. Well, how do you know they took that $50 and spent it on groceries? Are you confident they didn't just go out and spend it on their drugs or their alcohol? Well, I don't know, but they said they were really hungry. I'm not always saying you shouldn't give them grocery monies.
Right.
I'd prefer to give them groceries
Right.
or go buy the groceries for them
Right.
so that I knew they weren't misusing the money.
Right.
When I just give them resources in their desperation, knowing that they've had patterns of manipulation, I may actually be enabling, right? Not encouraging them toward truth and righteousness, but giving them the means to move further away from truth and righteousness. So I think of it that way. And again, that's the love doesn't always do what feels best.
Right.
Because you're going to feel that guilt of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either I do this and show them love, or I don't do this and I look unloving.
Yeah.
And they're kind of making you feel that way. And it's sad, but sometimes you just have to take a stand.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk about that in our survival guide in a minute. Let's hit this from a different angle. So I have a loved one, and I see the addiction forming. This, what we talked about last time. This voluntary enslavement. Like they're moving toward it. It's bad for them. It's starting to affect everything in the family. I'm not the only one who sees it. What do I do? What does intervention look like? Walk us through what you do when you start to notice this happening.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing to do is just have a loving, gentle conversation with them without accusation and get a sense for how they're thinking about whatever it is, whatever they're indulging in, whatever seems to be controlling them, helping them see the realities of what indulgence or control or the consequences of their behaviors are beginning to be, and in prayerfully hoping that God will use just humble questioning to stir their conscience to say, yeah, no, I'm going too far. Paul says, I will not be mastered by anything. I see how this is starting to control me. It's starting to control my family, my work, my schedule, my finances. So that'd be the first step, I would think, is just the one-on-one confrontation.
Yeah, help me understand. And one of the phrases we used last episode that I think is worth bringing back is some of that helps or hungers and hurts language. Like, so I just notice you're drinking a lot, or I notice this behavior. Like, what do you want out of that? What are you hoping to get? Are you honest with yourself? So the hunger, like the gambler is hungry for something, or the person who's drinking or taking drugs is hurting and they're trying to cover it up. Is that part of where you would go? A spouse is talking about, it's like, what are you running from? What's hard? What else can we do about that besides these things?
Right. I think sometimes you'll see that in the early stages. You'll hear language like, man, I had a really hard day at work. I need a drink. Right. And it becomes something that they do initially just as a relaxation tool, but it becomes a thing that they need to have whenever difficulty arises, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you see that after someone experiences a loss, like death of a loved one, or maybe a job loss, and now they feel useless. And I just need to unwind. I need to disconnect. I need to not feel these burdens in the same way. And so they turn to some substance or some behavior.
Yeah.
And so hearing that language is another reason. Sometimes it's just what you see. You might observe that they respond to difficulty by hitting the bottle, and it may look reasonable and in moderation at some level, and yet the connection between the difficulty and the substance, if that's consistent, it might not be as moderate as you think it is.
Right. What do you do if the issue is actually hurtful? So I think of gambling spends the money away. Pornography is a violation, maybe between a husband and wife, is a violation of the covenant commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. And your moral standing before God,
right?
As well as the marriage covenant if you're married. Yeah.
Yeah. So then in that case, the sort of obvious, hey, you're stealing money from our kids' mouths.
Right.
You got to talk to me about that. I mean, you're looking at whatever, other women, other men. You're engaging in this thing, and that's not right before the Lord. We got to talk about this. So that's still part of that first level. That's the first conversation.
Yeah.
And the Bible actually has an outline and process. So first, Jesus taught it. So Jesus is the one who talked about this kind of discipline or help. First, talk to that person privately. Then, if they don't listen, take a couple of people with you. If that doesn't work, if you're involved in a local church, you're bringing your church leaders and your church involved. And finally, the whole community is making some kind of evaluation. Like you don't look like whatever you say you love about God and whatever you're doing, your life is looking like something else.
Yeah.
So there is a biblical process.
Yeah, and that process, I would say we're obligated to follow that process if the person in your life is professing faith in Christ.
Yeah.
If they're not professing faith in Christ, there is practical wisdom to mimicking it. And in fact, like in the anonymous groups, what is referred to as an intervention,
Yeah.
Sort of mirrors that same process to the point
Yeah.
where you get a group of people who intervene, who confront them and appeal to them in love. Very much mirrors the biblical process for professing Christians. But you're not appealing so much to their faith as just to the harm that they're doing, the dangers it presents, et cetera. So,
Yeah. Whatever you say your faith is in, this is what it looks like you're really worshiping. We're really concerned about you, both for what you're doing to yourself, what you're doing to us around you, what you're doing before the Lord. And we're coming at this reframed from a biblical perspective, from a gospel perspective. So to the non-Christian, what is the gospel insert to the person who is, in a sense, being outed? We're intervening. You're damaging yourself. You're damaging us. You're sinning before God. How would you insert the gospel into a situation like this?
well, one, if you can get them to a place where they're acknowledging the danger or the harm that they're causing others, right? Guilt is a powerful motivator to seek forgiveness and
Yeah.
spiritual power in Christ. And so we're not trying to make people feel guilty for guilt's sake,
Right.
but rather to point them to their need for Christ and the gospel and forgiveness. So don't feel like making them feel guilty is a bad thing if you're using it as a step to preach the gospel to them. There's also what we talked about in our last podcast about the hurts and the hungers. Like what we want to help them see is that Christ is the answer to the hurts in their souls, whatever they are, or to the hungers of their souls that only Christ can satisfy. And his presence is fullness of joy. And so we're wanting to point them to something that is far greater than what they're getting out of the substance or the behavior or those things. And those aren't easy conversations to have. They're probably not conversations to have while the person is inebriated or intoxicated with whatever, but they're conversations that you should try humbly to have when the opportunities present themselves.
Yeah. So on one hand, you're saying Proverbs has a principle: the way of the sinner is hard. And it's not hard to illustrate to your loved one who's an addict. Here's Jesus' way, which is full of love, joy, peace. It's filled with joy and satisfaction, deep down, like controlling satisfaction.
Right.
Your way, which is a temporary out and is damaging everything around you. It's not hard to lay out the truth. Here's the good news then. What's hard is them to believe that the spiritual rescue is going to be worth giving up the hit, the escape from pain, because those are so strong in a person's life. But sometimes they have to come to their end. Yeah, freeing yourself from codependency, thinking about how to intervene well is going to be important. One thing I'd say really practically is if you have a loved one and you're required almost, you're married to them, they're a family member, to help them, you need your own team. So a lot of people try to go it alone, one, because they're ashamed, and I've got to do this. And then if they're not ashamed, they don't know how to get help. So we would just encourage you, you've got to have your team. In working with addiction cases within the church, there is the person who's got the life dominating sin. And we usually say, as pastors and elders, who's on team so and so. Like they're going to deal with the hard work of that person's repentance and change. Who's on team, pick the other side, because that person needs as much care and help. And the things that make us codependent are so powerful too. Like they're almost equally as powerful at
Mm.
time as the actual addiction is. And you need somebody to hold your hand to be strong, to not let the person manipulate you. So really get your team, a team of people for it. Let's talk about what the Bible calls repentance. So you've got a person who's an addict. Addictions take enormous effort to change. So we talked about that last week. There's a spiritual dynamic, a supernatural dynamic. God has real plans for them. Uh, the way it used to be framed was tough love.
Right.
So it's a little cliche now, but there does need to be some strong but compassionate love when you intervene. What kind of things do you expect would go along with that?
Well, often it's as simple as not intervening, right? So when your addict does something that results in consequences, an arrest, a broken relationship, like you're not trying to rescue them, right? So you're not intervening. Sometimes it means not doing something that you might otherwise be able to do, not providing for them financially because they're wasting all of their financial resources on their substance or their habit. And that's hard to do. In Shaw's book, he talks about the parable of the prodigal son, and it's a little bit different because the prodigal son left, went away to a far country, right?
Right.
So it's a little bit different. But the end of that parable in Luke 15, he's finally wastes all of his resources through loose living and debauchery, and it says they sent him into the fields to keep the swine, and he would have gladly filled his stomach with the pods that the swine were eating, and no one was giving anything to him. So the prodigal son got to the place where he had nothing. He wanted to eat pig slop because that was his best option. The next words in the text was, but when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have more than enough bread, but I am dying here with hunger. And so out of his great need and poverty, he came to his senses. So sometimes that's what we need to do. We just need to let natural consequences run their course so that people will come to the end of themselves. Now, I'm not saying we let people starve to death. I'm not saying it's always wrong to help them out, give them a place to stay. It takes a ton of wisdom. That's the other reason why you need a team
Right.
yourself as a loved one, as a caregiver, is to get some collective wisdom on when is this a good time or maybe a bad time to help, and what's the best way to help.
Yeah. And depending on the scenario, the person may not be safe to drive the kids.
Right.
They may not be safe to drive at all. They may not be safe to have in the home. It depends on what they do when they're getting what they want. So that usually goes on the substance and sort of mind altering things. But on the gambling or the porn or the other things, there's another kind of damage happening,
Right.
and not allowing them easy access to damage things. Like, I can't let you do that.
Right.
And I can't let you do that around the kids. I can't let you do that to our finances, because I'm talking more than you here. Usually the tricky thing is there are such things. I know that. I know people who are high functioning alcoholics, high functioning gamblers. They still make enough money and don't spend too much money, in that they still make the bills paid. And figuring out when to cut the line, like enough's enough. Like, how much does it damage you? How much does it damage them? Again, that's why your team is really important, especially a church team, because the church can say, you can hold the line against that behavior, and there's another team of people ready to help you
Mm.
as a person. So sometimes you feel literally stuck. If I don't let him or her do that, then I get kicked out of my house. So those are realities. They
Right.
get really far with money, resources, and those things. So make sure you have your team with it. One of the frustrations all of us have felt when we're helping an addict is the issue of deceit. So talk us through like what to do when you think you're being lied to or when you've been lied to.
Yeah, I mean that's really hard. When we work with addicts in the counseling center, I always tell the counselor, I, I hope you're ready to deal with deceit because you're probably going to get lied to.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever worked with an addict in any substance or porn or where they haven't lied to me at some point and it's come
Right.
out in the counseling process. So they're just so ensnared, so controlled by these passions that, just clouds their moral fortitude to speak honestly. And they're ashamed and control. I mean, it's
It's
such a
a
complex of
yeah, there's a mixed.
things.
No addict wants to be an addict. No
No,
addict is proud of it.
right.
They feel shame, they feel guilt, they feel out of control, and just to give the illusion of control helps them. Like I remember somebody saying to me, "If I admitted to what you just told me, what kind of person would that make me?"
Hmm.
Which I thought was revealing, and it's really common. Like, I just can't admit to being that kind of person. Sometimes that's the codependent person too. What kind of person would that make me? Um, so it circles back to it. But the deceit and trust are just so readily apparent. Um, I mean, I've felt it at times. How do I know so and so is lying? You know, his lips are moving. Like it's just it almost becomes too much to bear. I can't trust or
Right.
believe anything. And that's a point that you come to. So if we were to say tough, compassionate love, it goes from I want to believe you to trust and verify to I don't know what it will take for me to ever trust you again. Uh, when it comes to addiction, how do we deal with forgiveness? So I think a really practical thing we tell people all the time is there's a difference between forgiveness and trust.
Hmm.
How do you help people reason through forgiveness and trust?
So I think forgiveness starts always as an attitude of your own heart, where you're extending grace to another person and saying, I'm not going to um, hold the sin against them in the sense of this is going to cause a break in our relationship. But you can extend forgiveness and also implement consequences. The consequences come either as an unavoidable result of a person's sins, or those consequences could be things that you choose to do. Like you can no longer live in my home. You can no longer drive the children if these things are, you know, it's because I can't trust you yet. So the trust has to be earned back, even though the forgiveness can be granted. And again, this is another reason they have a team around you because that's a hard dynamic to maintain. Even in the process of someone, having to bear the consequences of their sin, you can you can start to have that attitude of malice, like, yeah, they deserve it. Um, and that attitude's not flowing out of a heart of forgiveness. It's coming from another place. We need help thinking through our own emotions and thoughts in these things often, and that's where the team helps.
Yeah, because sometimes, I mean, if we're thinking of tough but compassionate love, sometimes there are laws being broken.
Yeah.
And the best thing for a person is to call law enforcement. This person just drove away drunk. They need their, I'm just going to report a drunk driver. I mean, ma'am, it's your husband.
Yeah.
Well, I can't have him driving the kids, and I can't have him killing himself or somebody else.
Right.
So imagine those consequences. So the tough but compassionate love may be necessary. So utilize more than the interpersonal relationships. Sometimes you need to use law enforcement. Sometimes you need to take legal matters and create structures. And the popular word in counseling years back was boundaries,
Right.
but there are some reasonable things that you have to set up
Right.
to protect yourself, to protect your own, sometimes just protect your own soul and sanity. I just can't live with this under my roof, and I shouldn't have to.
Right.
It doesn't have anything to do with how kind of a person you are. It's managing that. Every addict I know at some point will convince you they have it all under control.
Yeah.
Either they're trying to do it now while you're having the conversation, so they're lying, or they get 3 days in detox and they're out and they got it. When do you say, well, the 3 days don't make you believable, or rehab doesn't make you believable? Great, you did 30 days. I still don't know if I believe you or trust you.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, well, Jesus taught this, right? If your right hand offends you, cut it off. If your right eye offends you, pluck it out. Um, it's better that you'd go through life maimed with one hand and one eye than to go to hell with both. And indicating that people who are truly repentant, who truly want to overcome the sin, are willing to take radical, drastic measures to do so. So I'm looking for a person. This is going to help restore trust when they're willing to take radical measures. And what you need to understand about addicts is they have become so controlled by their passions and by their behaviors and substances that their entire lives have been structured around it. They're planning their breaks at work around it. They're planning their route home from work in order to purchase more alcohol. They're planning their weekends. Um, they're strategizing about when their spouse is or is not going to be home. In order so they can indulge in these things, and the people they hang out with, the friends, they're going to hang out with the friends who are going to give them the things that they want or encourage the things that they think they need. And so the person who's truly repentant is going to be willing to totally restructure their life. And that could be new friends, a different job, getting rid of the gaming console, you name it. However and whoever has contributed to the pursuit of their addiction, they're going to be willing to get rid of it when they're truly repentant. And so the pattern is often, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to take that addiction and I'm going to lock it away in that dungeon and put that key in my pocket. And that's the problem, is they still have the key. They want
in their pocket,
in their pocket. They want to keep their foot in the door, whether it's that job, that route to work, that friend group, that gaming console, whatever. They want to keep their foot in the door of that sin. And so that's what I'm looking for, and that's what I'm trying to encourage as a real caregiver. And until they're willing to take all those measures, I'm going to have a hard time trusting them. And it will take longer to earn the trust.
There's all kinds of reasons people give to keep their key. So my job requires me to have access. So I need a smartphone. I need my laptop. I have to keep my job.
And that's why I say, well, maybe you need a different job.
So they fight for the key. One of the evidences that I think is really worth seeing is, like, why are you fighting so hard to keep the key? So it seems odd to me that you wouldn't do everything that you could to free yourself from that. So something you still want is there. And then that's when you know, as the caregiver, the person who loves them, oh, you're still really wanting, I think, the illusion of control, because we are really good rationalizers. We don't want the illusion of control. Who would want to admit that I'm not out of control? Or we still want access to it. So, somebody from the mission told me, oh, there's always a fifth of something hidden
Hmm.
somewhere
Yeah.
that they can go back to when it's difficult. So those are key things. I do think we should recognize if you're a caregiver, that's just the words I'm going to use for it: sponsor, spouse, loved one. If you're a caregiver, failure and building and rebuilding trust are just part of the process.
Yeah.
The person's going to fail. I think what gives us compassion is that we fail too. So I have besetting sins. That's what we talk about that in Christian circles. I have things that dog me that seem for me really hard to kill. So I have some patience for that. And then it's not that you're willing to not trust, not forgive, or rebuild. Um, it is that, well, when failure happens, trust needs to be built up again, because usually the level of life is of action is so damaging. No, we can't live like this because this is so damaging. I know where this goes. I've been here 7, 8, 9 times.
Yeah.
All right, so tough, compassionate love is very often part of the situation. Let's close maybe with I'm just going to call it the caregiver survival guide,
That's great.
because I think being the person involved with an addict, you love them, you might still be married to them, they might still be the father/mother of your kids. Like, you're not getting away from the relationship. How do I survive this? The reality about the voluntary bondage that we call addiction is it takes something supernatural to get the addict broken free. It takes something supernatural. It starts with a realization on their part that they can't do it on their own. And it's an acknowledgement that God's got to do something. And many people are willing to do that. But that's also true for you. You can't do this on your own. So there's a supernatural dynamic. I'd say the first thing on a survival guide for caregivers is prayer.
Hmm.
So part of your team should help you read and pray through your Bible in the appropriate areas that you're living through at the moment. It might not be the start in some obscure portion of the Bible. Your team will find you really relevant Bible passages, and just have people who read and pray with you, because you need God's power, and God promises to give his power.
Yeah.
Who are the best people? The second thing we've talked about is find your team. So pray. Second, find your team. That's part of the survival guide. Who would you recommend be on a team?
Well, I think it would probably start with family, others who might be affected, because a lot of choices that you hard choices that you might have to make, they're not just affecting you; they're affecting others.
Yeah.
So I think, especially believing family members, but then I would say spiritual mentors if you have them. Perhaps you're a small group leader at church or a pastor, elder, someone like that who can maybe bring a little more depth of wisdom from the scripture to bear on things and to speak into the situations. So um, I would start there.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So get your team. Just tell everybody who is a caregiver. And that really is going to go anywhere. I'm a caregiver for a mom with memory issues. At some level, I need a team. I need
Yeah,
some people to pray for and help me. So just imagine for something really, really difficult, um, like this addiction where, you know, my mom can't help herself.
hmm,
These people can help themselves. So all the more you need a team. Uh, I think the third thing I'd say is keep tabs on your own coping mechanisms. If we're to talk about things like that's what's tied to codependency, is I'm trying to survive my way through this, and I have a whole lot of things inside me. What kind of spouse am I? What kind of parent am I? What kind of child am I? That are sometimes at the root of those things. How many alcoholics have an alcoholic spouse? Because he's got his issues, I've got my issues. So suddenly now both of you
yeah,
are so what are you doing to survive? And is it in the strength that God provides and the wisdom he provides from his word, or is it through some other thing? Um, one of the things that I remember about addicts in my life is they were really generous to cover up their addiction.
Mm,
So they would buy drinks for everybody, which felt great. Drinks for
right.
everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. Now so just watch your own coping mechanisms.
Yeah. You may be tempted to, you might not imitate their problem,
Right.
but you may turn to something else.
Yeah.
Well, if they're going to do this, then I'm going to do that. And that becomes an even deeper problem for you. And in addition to behaviors like that, it could be habits of anger or habits of withdrawal
Right.
or habits of vengeance.
Yes.
So there's all kinds of ways that we might be tempted to cope with these things that we run to, and we're not even really seeing uh, the depth of that because what's provoking it seems so much worse to us.
Yeah.
Right? Again, good team members can help us see in inappropriate ways of coping with the problem.
The ones that I would worry about most are the habits of withdrawal.
Yeah,
Habits of anger, at least you know what's wrong.
kind of
Like
it's harder to hide those.
yeah, but also like, well, in some ways you're right to be angry because there's an
Right.
injustice to be done. So I'm not as concerned about those as I am about withdrawal and hiding because I'm ashamed because I just don't want to deal with it. And I've watched all kinds of versions of the withdrawal, just pretending like it doesn't exist, escaping. We're just going to take the kids out of the house all the time, or we're just going to do this other thing because I don't want to have to deal with it. So, what are your coping mechanisms? Those are good. And give us that last one, Brian. Like, as we thought about the controlling idea of this whole thing,
Yeah.
what does love do here?
Commit to what is best,
Yeah.
not always to what feels best.
Yeah.
Sometimes doing the right thing, the thing that's truly going to encourage that addict is the thing that's going to be really hard. It's the hard choice to let them get the DUI and have their license revoked. It's to let them spend 3 days in jail until the hearing
Or at the mission.
or at the mission.
Yeah.
It's to and that can be even harder if some of those consequences are going to affect you.
Right.
Your spouse loses their driver's license, like
You're going to
you
have to
make
drive.
that call. My husband just drove off drunk. He's on his way here driving a blue Hyundai Santa Fe. Like that's a hard call to make, but that's making that call is a lot easier than getting the call that your drunk husband just killed a family
Yeah.
in a head-on collision, and now he's going to jail for involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah.
So that's a harder call to get than the call that you probably should make. And again, there's so much wisdom involved in those things, but doing what is best, tethering your concern to what is true and right, and how can God use consequences and chastening to accomplish good purposes in people's souls, just like we see the poverty and desperation of the prodigal son helping him come to his senses. That was best for him.
Yeah.
That he found himself sitting there wishing he could eat the pig slop.
Perhaps that's what will have to happen for that person to come to their senses.
Perhaps.
What I want to say, if you are a caregiver for an addict, you need your team. We would love to be a help at that. So I don't know where you're watching this, but a local church is the best place to get your team because we're all sinners saved by grace. By Jesus' grace, we are being changed. We all still have our own issues, our sins to deal with that we're growing with. So it's a compassionate community, and it's a set of people who have probably been around the block once or twice that can help you. So get to a local church, find pastoral or counseling help that helps you be a good caregiver for someone. That would be essential. So Faith Bible Church would be a great place for that. We like to say it all the time. You find your people here. There will be people who can help you, and we would love to be a resource for you. We've got some things that we'll put in the show notes, and this helpful book by Mark Shaw, Divine Intervention, might be a resource for you to use. There are other things for us, and feel free to reach out to us wherever you're watching. If you have further questions or you really want to get that team and you need a phone call from somebody, give us an email or a call, and we would love to point you the right direction wherever you are. Thanks for watching this episode of Reframed. If it helped you shift your perspective on this issue, check out the links in the description for more resources. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment to let us know what topics you'd like us to reframe next. If you're here in Spokane, we would love to see you at Faith Bible Church. Services are at 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. every Sunday. You can find all the details at fbchurch.org. And if you're watching from somewhere else, we hope you'll get connected with a gospel-centered church in your area. There's a link below to help you find one. We'll see you next time on Reframed.